everybody sometimes too, it's always a good thing is they're like, hey, what's your occupancy percentage? That's the most common thing. And I'm like, well, that's only half the equation, because revenue is made up of two things: average daily rate and occupancy, which both I can manipulate. If I want 100% occupancy, I could charge $89 a night for our sweet 5-bed with a mini golf and pickleball. And guess what? I'll be booked every night of the year. I'm not going to make any money. At the same time, I could be egotistical, be like, man, I'm not charging anything less than $2,000 a night, and I could be at 40% occupancy. So there's a sweet spot, and it's never known per property. But it's really finding where that magic is, where you're not charging too much that you're too vacant.
Listen, everybody, we all know that real estate is the most proven way to build wealth. But why isn't everyone wealthy from real estate then? It's hard to know where to start, and most of the education out there is just complete trash, and you end up investing your money on a series of courses instead of in real estate. That's not how this podcast works. We give you the blueprint to successful real estate investing and bring on guests actually willing to share their secrets. I started my real estate investing journey as a freshman in college when I bought my first duplex, and have been in the trenches doing deals ever since. And today, I now own hundreds of millions of dollars of investment property. On this podcast, you will learn what you actually need to know to be a successful active or passive real estate investor. And we'll offer our takes on what's happening today so you can navigate this market and build wealth. I'm Drew Breneman, and this is the Breneman Blueprint.
Taylor Jones with Techvestor is on the podcast today. Taylor is the head of acquisitions for Techvestor, and Techvestor has acquired over 120 Airbnbs in the last 19 months as they scale their portfolio. And so this is our first, Airbnb or short-term rental episode. So excited for it. Welcome, Taylor.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Drew.
Yeah, and we met a couple weeks ago out in Santa Monica at the Reconvene real estate Twitter conference, basically. Have you gone to that before? That was the first one I had gone to.
Yeah, I'd gone last year, so this was the second one that I went to.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I thought the speakers were really good, and then it was probably the first kind of conference type thing I went to where like the food was actually good and it was kind of fun. So
yeah, they do it right. They definitely bring in good food, good speakers. It's definitely a different mood this year versus last year. You could tell in the whole, commercial real estate or general real estate as a whole, people weren't as gung-ho and happy and, a little less smile. So that was something year over year I saw was, there was less of that going on.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, there's not as many deals happening, and then a lot of people that have, the people dealing with higher interest rates and low deal flow and lots of trouble depending on what they're investing in. So yeah, for sure. Yeah. Picked up on that. And yeah, that's what, a lot of the conversations were around that too, like how much cap rates have moved or interest rates, and where before, yeah, it's probably more just kind of people trying to predict, I bet, if it's is this just a blip with the Fed raising rates and let's go back to what we were or whatever. So yeah, I was picking up on that too. So, but yeah, I think why don't just kind of let's start with the basics. So then what is a short-term rental?
Yeah, so a short-term rental is anything, technically that you're renting for 29 days or less. There's kind of this new midterm category. So midterm rentals, and that's, 31 to 180. And then obviously I think anything 181 days or longer, you would fall into short-term rental. Or into long-term rental, apologies. So, with the short-term rentals, it's those, 1, 2, 3, 7, 10, anything kind of sub 27 night stays, for a property.
And are you guys doing midterm rentals, or you try to keep it all under that initial?
Yeah, we're all short-term rentals. We're laser focused. I don't think it's a bad strategy. It's just a slightly different one. For us, we're just hyper focused on short-term rentals. We really know the metrics and the data for that very well. But I have seen some people who have focused on those midterm rentals and, had some really successful numbers.
Okay, nice. Yeah, and what would you say then? What's some of the more appealing aspects of short-term rentals? Like, why are people doing this versus long-term rentals?
Yeah, I think definitely, the biggest one was yield. Everybody got in for the insane yields that these things spit out. Now, those have obviously kind of subdued a little bit, with everything going on. Supply increases and cost of debt is just more expensive. I also think it's usability. If you own an industrial building, it's not like you're going to go over there for the night with a sleeping bag and your to-go kit and go post up in your 10 by 10 box. Whereas a short-term rental, you get that usability. So I think having all those aspects, it really brings it in and makes it an appealing opportunity for people.
So then saying like a lot of individuals that do a few of these, like one of the benefits in their mind is they're going to be using it for a part of the year.
Yeah, no, certainly. And that's a huge thing is, hey, can I, you see a lot of different camps. It's, can I get this for free in essence? So, hey, pays for itself. Maybe you don't make any money on it, but hey, you have a free vacation, you get in principal pay down, a spot for your, you can hold this for the next 30 years and your family can go use it. Then there's some that look for, hey, still want to use it, but I want to eke out a small profit. And then the third camp, which is where we fall, is pure investment. We don't use any of the assets. They're, full-time rentals from that regard.
Yeah, my girlfriend is in the camp of like, let's get one and then we can also use it. But I think I always am like, well, I think the sweet spot is where you have enough money to like just have the second house and you can just leave all your stuff out. Because one thing I always wonder, and you'd be the person to ask about this, is like I just assume like, okay, I'd have to pretty much lock up all my stuff like in a closet. You don't want to just leave your toothbrush out, like that's obvious. So you need a owner's closet or room. But then like how long does the furniture last with these? Because you're obviously the owner is the most gentle on everything. I mean, everyone who's stayed at a hotel, like you're not as careful in that room as your own room. So how long does like furniture last and what's the wear and tear like?
Yeah, that's definitely the biggest thing. Compared to long-term rentals, overall maintenance on the physical property is going to be less because, when you really think about it, most short-term rentals are probably going to be anywhere from, 60 to 80% if you're a full-time rental. So it's a vacant for, 30% of the year per se. So from that regard, you're not getting as much general wear and tear. And on top of that, even when people are staying, a lot of them are out, going on nature hikes, going to the national park, in town. So they're really just there to sleep, maybe eat. They're not really there all that often. But when they are there, they're utilizing the heck out of the furniture. So that is the one thing that gets beat up. It's that delicate balance of getting, high quality furniture, but at a good price. So we're always fighting that battle of, do we just go cheaper and just know that, hey, we're just going to have to replace this every 1 to 3 years? Or do we try to spend more, eke out maybe 3 to 5 years with it? But, it's that never ending battle and we're constantly making tweaks and adjustments. But yeah, definitely furniture gets beat up for sure.
But yeah, you'd say most furniture is like a 1 to 3 year kind of thing.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, because I could see also. I mean, if it'd be tough to go, with too nice of furniture because just one stain can kind of do it in. Even if it was better quality. So.
Yeah, never fun to get the the red wine spills or the ketchup and mustard hot dogs from the kids. Yeah, those are never great calls to hear from the property management team.
Yeah. And then on the 1 to 3 years typically on furniture. Then what about the stuff that you guys provide? Like like hangers and different stuff like that. How often does that go missing? Let's say.
Yeah, I mean, there's always some level of like, you put 20 hangers in the closet and, after a year, you're like, we're down to 15. And, there's just that natural there. And on the flip side, though, you'll see accumulation of things. And so what I mean by that is you might leave guests like some olive oil, some salt, pepper, and then all of a sudden 6 months later, you've got paprika, cayenne pepper, garlic, like you got a full spray, some Montreal seasoning. So, for every guest that maybe takes a hanger or takes a roll of toilet paper, all of a sudden people just leave stuff. And, obviously if it's perishable, like, half-used ketchup, we're throwing that away. But if it's, non-perishable stuff that future guests can use, we'll just leave it in there for everybody else to enjoy.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed. Like now when I go somewhere, I'm usually will check and see like what's the coffee situation before buying anything, because usually they already have the filters there, and then someone bought a full thing of coffee and then was there for 3 days and still got a week's worth of coffee in the cabinet. And I stayed at one in Phoenix where they all the hangers were taken. That's why I had the hanger question where when I messaged the host, property manager, whatever, he was like, "You're sure you've looked everywhere? We just had all these nice, every closet was full of like nice wood hangers." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not kidding. There's no hangers in this whole house." So,
well, that's the balance too. If you put some of those like accessory things that you're providing to guests, if you go too nice with like the wood hangers versus the plastic, you invite people to maybe take them with them. So, again, you don't want to put cheap stuff in there, but at the same time, you don't want to put too expensive that, risk getting stolen. So there's there's this, it's kind of an art form, we say when you're actually operating these hospitality businesses, which is really what they are at the end of the day, that you got to find that balance of, good quality, but yet, not going to entice somebody to maybe take it from you.
Yeah, I think he learned his lesson. He came back from Target with the plastic ones where it wasn't, not the metal thin ones, but where, the plastic ones. So that's the right balance. They're still nice enough, but not, you don't need to put a 10-cent hanger in your luggage. So
yeah, for sure.
Then what would you recommend people do? And I'm curious what you guys do. What's sort of the shortest stay you guys will take on?
So we personally won't do anything under 2 nights. It's also the type of product we have. We typically have larger homes, these 3, 4, 5, 6 bedroom homes, accommodate groups. It's rare for a group to go in for a 1 night stay, unless quote unquote it's a party. So typically if you do have a larger home and you allow 1 night stays, you are inviting parties, which is a risk just we don't take. So we're a 2 night minimum. If you have those smaller, like 1 condo type units, and you'll get maybe somebody in town or it's a layover, it's right before the flight. I see a lot of those allow 1 night stays. You're obviously competing in the hotel space, at that point. But for us, we're 2 night minimum, and that's kind of the space that we play in.
What would you say is the average booking length then?
For us, we're right around 3.2, 3.4 nights. That's really where we fall. You'll typically, obviously, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is a very common booking. We'll get a lot of Thursday to Sunday, Friday to Monday, some midweek stuff. So right now, our average floats somewhere between 3.2 and 3.4 nights booked.
Okay, nice. And yeah, you guys are mostly doing we didn't get into what Techvestor is doing exactly yet, but you guys have maybe why don't you tell us about the properties you guys are buying? Yeah,
it's a lot of typically 3, 4, 5 bedroom, 6 bedroom homes. We do own some 1s and 2s when the data looks good. But for the most part, it's matching our avatar. So if we're in a family focused market, we're going to buy those larger, 3, 4, 5, 6 bedroom homes that'll accommodate 8 to 16 guests, whether it's 1 large family or 2 or 3 getting together. So that's typically what we're doing for our accommodations. And that's what kind of lends to, what we do. And it's really figure out who our guest avatar is. And we're going to kind of, design and amenitize that property to fit it.
And how do you figure out the avatar?
So it's really just looking at the data, looking at the comps. So you're seeing, who is that traveler? What's nearby? Obviously like the obvious example is, if you're investing near Disney, clearly that's, it's family focused. If you're investing near, like a sports stadium or something, you might get, groups of friends or, dudes. If you're investing near a hospital, you might get, mom and dad visiting if somebody was sick or, husband, wife. So it's really just figuring out like what brings people to that location, studying, seeing, looking at the data, and those are things that we'll figure out whenever we go into a new market.
And do you guys pick like a theme or have some of these? I've seen some of these. I've never stayed in one, but you go, it's like the pink house or something. Like, would you guys go that far with it, or what are you doing?
Yeah, we've done a couple of them. So what's great with our scale is we can test things out based on the data. So we do have like a pink Barbie-ish house. I know you can't say that without getting in trouble, but it is as much a pink Barbie-esque house as possible. We lean into groups of women staying at that house traditionally. We have a sports theme. We'll call it a dude's house per se. Tons of to sleep up to 16 dudes. Huge 5-6 bedroom house with everything from poker tables, miniature golf, pickleball, basketball, bowling, game room, and everything under the sun to truly accommodate the boys' weekend per se. So we have leaned into some of those specialized groups, and then just a ton of families, family stays, playgrounds, game rooms, amenities. Less individual theme, but just awesome amenities, great design. That's kind of our core bread and butter. But the good news is, we can always test things out if we think the data looks good, and we're right more often than not.
Nice. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And how are you guys setting your rental rates? And I guess what would you recommend people do for that?
Yeah, certainly. So, there's a lot of dynamic pricing tools out there. So, kind of when this asset class started, people would do, okay, I charge $99 for Monday to Thursday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I charge, $199. And, we call that flat rate pricing. And then the industry kind of evolved, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago. And people start bringing in algorithms based on demand. It's like, oh, well, maybe on Christmas weekend, you should charge more. Or, oh, there's this concert in town, you should charge more. And so a lot of these algorithms are picking up on when there's surges in demand, there's more people searching, and they're telling you, hey, you should increase your prices this weekend. There's a lot of cool tools you can use. We have gone even further, and we've built our own kind of algorithms and software on top of those. We've kind of felt that they don't fully go far enough. I think they're great if you're the common investor. You don't want to keep up with it. You're not, making adjustments every day like we are. Some of those great dynamic pricing tools are really good. They can build, some baseline algorithms for you to at least get you, slightly above average revenue for your properties.
And which ones have you liked?
Some of the big players are Price Labs and Wheelhouse. So those are some of the, beyond pricing. Those are the three kind of main ones that most people use.
Okay, nice. What do people use AirDNA for? I think I have that.
Yeah, so that's one of the larger data aggregators. So when you're looking at a potential property and you're like, man, what does occupancy look like? What is average daily rate? What is revenue? You're going to want to pull in, kind of data comps from the area. So places like AirDNA, places like Rabu, are a couple of the larger data aggregators. So what you'll be able to do is go on there and see the Airbnb listing itself. It'll give you directionally correct data. Nothing's exact. So what I mean by that is a lot of them are kind of scraping the Airbnb calendar. So like an example, that would be, if tomorrow on Friday, the property is listed at $250 a night, and the algorithm checks tomorrow and it's booked, it's going to assume it got booked for $250 a night. Now, the owner could have offered a discount. The owner could have blocked it for themselves, so they didn't actually make that $250 a night. So that's why we always say they're directionally correct, but they're never perfect. But it'll at least give you a solid idea of what occupancy looks like, what rough, average daily rates look like, and potential revenue, so you can understand, is this, a good acquisition or not?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I was looking at potentially taking a couple of units that were slow to rent in Chicago and just being like, let's just turn those into Airbnbs. And so it was an estimate on the average nightly rate, and then average daily rate, and then the occupancy. Then I think I had asked them for a pro forma, like what we'd be looking at for expenses, and then I never got any further than that. We needed to get on a. Oh man,
I wish we know each other, man. I would have helped you out. I've had a couple of had a guy out of Atlanta, a guy in New Orleans, reach out as well. Like, hey, like what if we just converted the bottom 10 units or the first floor or something? Can we get 2x, 3x the quote unquote, instead of 1,500, can we get 3,000, 3,500 a month? Obviously that's going to really juice the NOI on your property and help out. So, I've seen a lot of owners do that, where they segregate part of the building and dedicate them to short-term rentals or even midterm rentals. If they're, near a hospital or something like that, you get a traveling nurse and you do a lot of those, 30 to, 90-day stays per se.
Yeah, it really depends on what kind of lender you're using, because some of them they on the multifamily side, they don't let you do that. Like, it's explicitly in the Fannie and Freddie loan docs, they don't want that, or at least they don't want and they don't want you to rent to entities. It has to be to people. So then I didn't get very far with it, because I was like, seems like I'd have to rent it myself. Then now I'm exposing myself to liability, because I have to do it in my name. Or that I'm not following the rules exactly with my loan. But if you have a bank loan, that makes total sense. And a number of our deals in Phoenix, we just have bank loans on them. And then that's obviously a market you guys are in. And, there's a lot of people that ask us about if they could do, they always have the same story. They hit us up and they say that they're doing, traveling nurses, and then they'll supplement it with it being on Airbnb. And it's like, they're just doing Airbnb, which, that's fine if that's what you're getting yourself into. So we, and those are 20 or 30 unit buildings. So we've been okay with 1 or 2 units doing that. But we haven't brought that in-house. We've just rented it to them at a slight premium to what the others are paying, and just let them do it themselves. So, because those also are, they're 1 and 2 bedroom units. So it's a lot different than what you guys are doing. So, and it seems like the margins were thin when I was looking at what they were getting. So
yeah, certainly if you are doing those 1 and 2s, you have to be razor focused on the operations, because there's just less to play with. So a 5% dip in OpEx hurts you a lot more than on a 4-bedroom house per se.
Yeah. What would be I guess kind of going through maybe then underwriting. So I got that, let's say I would have wanted to pursue that further, or I mean, potentially I might, but it's like I have the AirDNA estimates for annual revenue. What would you do then to those revenue numbers if you're me? You think those are close enough, or you like to have like an adjustment you make, or?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I never, we never take what's there, and I always tell people don't take it at face value, but more or less look at the comps, because if they're forming an average of 5 comps or 6 comps, well, you want to see what are you closely aligned to. It might pull in stuff that has a pool and you don't. It might pull in stuff that has a gym and you don't. So those are going to skew your kind of average up or down. So I'm going to really actually dive into the comps and kind of form my own average. If half of them have pools and half of them don't, I'm going to kind of exclude the one that I don't fit per se. So I want to try to find the properties that are the closest to me and get at least 3 to 5 of those. And then I'll kind of build my own like calculations, like, okay, based on this, the average is, 72% occupancy, $67,000 a year in gross revenue. So once I kind of have my numbers down from, top line, then you're just going to work through your expenses. You're going to have, debt service, is obviously always going to be there in some way, shape, or form. And then you'll just go through all the other, operating expenses that are necessary for a short-term rental, things like utilities, maintenance costs, household supplies like toilet paper, shampoo, the Wi-Fi, cleaning, anything else that you're going to do that it takes to operate that, hospitality business, that's going to go in there. If you Google, there's a ton of like free underwriting templates online. It's really just like, user preference, customer preference. We've built our own, we've, made renditions to it as we see fit. But for the most part, there's those same, 8 to 12, depending on your property expenses, snow removal, in Maine, but probably not in Florida on your underwriting, or, pool cleaning in Florida, but probably not in Maine, on the flip side. So, like I said, there's going to be a common like 8 to 12, line items that you're going to see. Utilities, maintenance, household supplies, Wi-Fi, etc. And so you'll just go in and look at what is market Wi-Fi, $99 a month, $149, whatever it might be. What is utilities, roughly here on a 2,000 square foot house, or a, 500 square foot, apartment. So you just go through and plug in those in, and then ultimately it'll tell you like, hey, is this going to run in the negative? Is there any free cash flow left? And then from there, you can assess, is it worth it or not, based on what you're trying to achieve.
Let's keep going on the expense side, because I think when I first started in apartments, that was where, and I did not own any deals. Like now, I was able to cobble together estimates, and it worked out fine. But I feel like it was easier to estimate my costs being the landlord of a duplex versus running an Airbnb, just because like I wasn't paying for what was going on inside really. So then, like, just to kind of run through the cost, like taxes, I mean that, or I guess, why don't you tell us what you do? I was gonna say what I do. So well, let's just run through them all. Yeah.
Yeah. So, going through there, so you'll have insurance, and typically, if it's a single family home, or some asset, you're going to have, regular home insurance. Then on top of it, you're going to have things like short-term rental insurance. You are running a hospitality business, so there'll be some extra liability mixed in. And then there could be additional riders that you could elect to take, like loss of income. What if your place gets hit by a hurricane and you're offline for 2 months and you have all these canceled bookings? You can file a loss of income rider and get reimbursed for those, which is really great. So obviously it increases your premium, but it gives you that, hey, just in case, or, like personal experience, had one of our cabins up north, the pipes froze. And when they thawed out, the ice punctured a hole, end up flooding the basement. It's like 3 inches of water down there. So the game room, the LVP flooring, all gone. Had to cancel like $2,800 worth of bookings. Took about 10 days offline. But what's great is we filed that loss of income rider. Insurance company sends a check for $2,800. You send over the receipt for all the lost bookings, and then you file regular homeowners insurance for the LVP, the couch, the air hockey table that got damaged, and that stuff gets replaced. So that's kind of how that's treated from the insurance side. Taxes are going to be assessed at whatever the, state or local, thing, whether it's, a state that reassess every year, every 8 years. That's always very generous when you could sneak in there and buy something that's got 7 years left before reassessment. So you have taxes. You'll have utilities, which it's always more than you think. And, if you have a 2,000 square foot house and you're like, oh, well, my, electric bill is normally $300 a month, you got to understand the first thing you do, and you think about this yourself personally, when you go into a hotel, you crank the air down to 60 degrees. And so does every Airbnb guest. So your utility bill will always run 1.5 to 3x what it is. I mean, we have some 3, 4, 5, 6 bedroom houses that might run into 4 figures a month, for that. So, you got to be, it's also too, does it have a pool, other amenities? Is it Arizona when it's 110 degrees in summer? All those factors. So you're going to have that. You obviously have, some of the basic CapEx stuff, potentially, the furniture, HVAC, water heater, et cetera. Just understanding the livelihood of how much those have left, the expected life. You'll also have just general maintenance. So every month you might run into, hey, the hot tub's not working. You got to pay a service call to have a handyman go out there and, fix it. Sometimes guests are not the brightest in the world, which kind of sucks because you're paying that money. Sometimes it's legitimately broken. Sometimes it's they don't understand how to work a hot tub or a TV remote or start the fireplace, whatever it might be. So you'll have general maintenance. Household supplies, you're restocking shampoo, toilet paper. We always provide coffee for all the guests. So, things like that, detergent, shampoo, the long list of things that are necessary to stock a house. So when you really start like going through, you'll want to use reference points. There's definitely great stuff online as kind of like general guides. But, I always say you got to look at it from not like your perspective of being in a home, but more or less what is it happening in a vacation market, and, what do people do when they're on vacation?
No, yeah, that's great. And I think too, then if let's say you're getting, because the houses you guys buy are larger, so but you guys, would you still look at like a 2,000 square foot, 3-4 bedroom house, or are you is that in your sweet spot? Or
yeah, no, that's probably actually where most of our stuff is in that 2 to 2,800 square foot range. That's our bread and butter. I think we own as small as 600 square feet and as high as 5,000 square feet. But if you put it on a bell curve, we probably fall right in that 2,400 square foot range. Is pretty much probably our average buy.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I see the bigger ones then on Twitter and wherever, and LinkedIn, because then
those seem to get more pull than the non-sexy 780 square foot two with like a nice design. Doesn't quite move the needle. Unfortunately, most of what I post is the bigger, larger, more over the top stuff, because that'll get run. Not the check out this 1,200 square foot 3.2 with a fire pit, and yeah, the cost basis was great and it's cash flowing, double digit yield. Just doesn't quite move the needle. So that doesn't get any run on social media, unfortunately.
Sounds like my post. Yeah, that's here's a bread and butter apartment deal we're doing well on. It's like, yeah, that's great. You get like your lender and attorney liking it. And then your mom, basically. But yeah, let's say we're underwriting that 3-bedroom house. Then it comes through. So that's, you're going to underwrite those additional insurance coverages. Like you guys take those, it sounds like, given
your example. Obviously it's a personal decision to take like the loss of income rider or some of those add-ons that you can. If I think most lenders will require like a $1 million liability. Some people want to elect for 2. So, you got to find where your comfort level is, as an operator, and what you want to take on. So we'll put all those in, and, typically like napkin math, and obviously this can vary, heavily by market and by product type, but assuming you're a single family home, 3 to 5 beds, typically what you're going to see for OpEx is maybe as low as 30% and as high as, 45%. So, real example, on a $100,000 property, $100,000 in gross revenue, single family home in that range, you'll probably have operating expenses that'll run anywhere from 30 to 45,000 on there. The only other things that are missing from that is there a property management fee? So are you self-managing it or hiring somebody? So that would be tacked on in addition. And then the last thing you'll have is debt service. But that'll typically get you to where your NOI will be. If you go dabble in those 1s and 2s, you can obviously get into the mid-20s. You can get some 25, 28% OpEx. So again, if, a 1 or a 2 bed's generating, $50K in gross revenue, you could be somewhere in that, $15K, $18K for total OpEx, and again, that's every expense except debt service and property management, if there is any.
And when you said your 100,000 a revenue example, was that is of gross potential rent, or that's after the vacancy?
That's total collected dollars. So everybody sometimes too. It's always a good thing is they're like, hey, what's your occupancy percentage? That's the most common thing. And I'm like, well, that's only half the equation because revenue is made up of two things: average daily rate and occupancy, which both I can manipulate. If I want 100% occupancy, I could charge $89 a night for our sweet 5-bed with a mini golf and pickleball. And guess what? I'll be booked every night of the year. I'm not going to make any money. At the same time, I could be egotistical, be like, man, I'm not charging anything less than $2,000 a night, and I could be at 40% occupancy. So there's a sweet spot, and it's never known per property. But it's really finding where that magic is, where you're not charging too much that you're too vacant and not there. When you talk to a lot of the professionals in the space, what they'll typically tell you is that the math is going to fall somewhere between 72 and 82% occupancy. Now, again, there's outliers. Like if you have a lake house in Michigan, it's going to be hard to even run north of 62, 65% occupancy. And that's like humming because in the winter you're dead. There's no skiing, etc. But if you have a more year-round-esque market, to be really maximizing your revenue, you're really going to fall somewhere between 72 and 82. If you're more occupied, you're probably not charging enough. And if you're sitting there at 65, 67, you're probably overcharging and leaving some money on the table. So for us, that's kind of the art form, is maximizing the revenue. So when I talk about revenue, that is just total collected dollars, but that builds in whatever that level of vacancy is that happened for that property and for that market.
Okay. So yeah. So if someone typed in on AirDNA or something, would it be telling them on your 100,000 example, like it's we're getting 133,000 a year revenue, then you're 25% vacancy, then you're at 100,000? Or what are people getting usually out of those tools? Like they need to know, do they need to know that occupancy range themselves?
It'll give them. Well, no, it'll provide it for you based on the market. So it'll look at all the other 3 bedrooms and say, okay, hey, the average is right here. And then it'll take in some of the amenities. So if you have a pool, you're probably going to be more occupied. Or if you have a hot tub, you're probably going to have more occupancy just naturally on some of those things. So it's going to take all those into account. So when it gives you your revenue number, that's actually the revenue they're projecting based on this level of average daily rate and this level of occupancy based on the comps. So they're going to pull what the average competitor's charging per night, what their vacancy is, and they're going to put the two together to give you a projected revenue. So if it tells you 100, it's truly 100. It's not like, 133 with vacancy. It's just, hey, you're probably going to be at 72, 75% occupancy. So obviously you'll have, that level of vacancy. And then based on that, your average daily rate is this. So, again, if you have 2 out of the 3, you can always backdoor into the third. If I have the revenue and the occupancy, I can tell you what the average daily rate is. If I have the average daily rate plus the occupancy, I can tell you what the revenue is. So as long as you have 2 out of 3 of the pieces, you can always backdoor into the third missing piece. But if somebody only asks about one piece, they're like, hey, what's your average daily rate? And I'm like, you're asking me for half the equation. It doesn't matter what my average daily rate is. What matters is my revenue. That's the money I'm making. My average daily rate is only half the equation, which again, I can manipulate based on my occupancy. So those are kind of things from somebody new that I hear. That's why I was like, ooh, you haven't been in this asset class before if you're asking that kind of question. So it's a really nice thing to learn if you're an outsider to the space.
Yeah, because do people use RevPAR in the Airbnb world or?
Yeah, no, well, especially when you have multiple units, revenue per available rental, RevPAN, revenue per available night. There's a lot of different ways to look at what you have. It's ultimately what you're looking to achieve, out of your property. Because sometimes too, maximizing revenue and maximizing profit don't go hand in hand. A lot of people think, if I just make the most revenue, not necessarily true. So it's really, there's different ways, when you look at it. So it's, what's your ultimate goal? Are you purely based on yield? Are you purely based on filling it? Are you purely based on top line rev? So that's going to vary by the investor. But that's going to ultimately be what metrics you're going to track and what you're going to benchmark up against.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Yeah. Cause I know that's, people use that in the hotel world. And I thought that that's your, RevPAR was your revenue, per day on average, like factoring in, vacancy, I thought, so then they kind of at least figured out a language to use that then factors that in, I think. So Makes sense.
Yeah, it's
why.
always good when you have, 100 rooms inside of a building. You need that metric. You can't, if you have a standalone single family home, that metric's not going to give you as much data per se. Because, it's like revenue per available room. Well, you only have one room, quote unquote, to rent that house. Yes, it could be a 4-bedroom, but you're not subletting each one individually. So when you only have one property, it's not a metric. But in the hotel space, definitely, and operators who maybe own a dozen or more, some of them will track that as well.
Okay, nice. And then to keep going to the expense side, so that was taxes, insurance, you want to get quotes from your agent, and then you guys are going with those additional coverages. Then utilities, just you would, for a plug number, just do 3 times what it would normally be.
Yeah, if you want to be conservative, because I can take hey, I live in a 2,000 square foot house and mine is X, but you're always going to probably be 1.5 to 3, depending on the area, depending on the product size, for utilities. Just because, again, first thing somebody does when they check in, crank that air down to 60 degrees, kick their feet off, drop their bags, and leave the windows open.
Yeah.
People are not that bright and or courteous. So those are things that are going to hurt you when you're underwriting utilities. Maintenance, depending on the property size, could run you anywhere from $200 to $600 a month. And again, that's a lot of those like service calls, small fixes. If it falls into more large CapEx related, you would file that under CapEx. You'll also have your monthly services. So if you have lawn care, so if somebody's coming in to cut the lawn, if you have pool cleaning, so that'll be a line item. Snow removal, trying to go through geographically what else you would,
Pest control.
have in there. Pest control, every quarter or every month. I think most of the ones that we have are quarterly, but so those are the things you're gonna really just start tacking on there, and those are fairly market rates. Not like pest controls anymore, or whatever it costs to mow the grass for a primary resident is the same as a single family, as a short-term rental.
Pool cleaning could be more.
Pool cleaning,
yeah.
Pool cleaning could be more. They're like, hey, the filter's clogged. We had to use extra chlorine because your guest dirtied the water. So. If you have a hot tub too, so you'll have hot tub cleaning, hot tub, repairs, maintenance. Those will be extra. So it's really just like, what are those extra amenities that you're putting in there? Like even things for us when we add miniature golf. Like we talked about with the hangers, we might start and there's 6 golf balls for people to use, and all of a sudden you're like, man, there's no more, and people are over here taking all the Pro V1s and all the good stuff out. So you have to kind of underwrite for some loss there under that for amenity replacement.
Yeah, makes sense. And so then that's maintenance, that's the contract services. Then what about turnover? How do you guys underwrite that? Because also you have the cleaning fee revenue.
Yeah, so that'll just fall under cleaning, really. So ultimately, when you get a bid for, a turnover, the cleaning is going to be, comprised of 2 things. It's going to be cleaning the physical home plus the laundry, which is really just hours. It does not take, if standard is checkout is 10 a.m. and check-in is, 3 p.m. or 4 p.m., it doesn't take 5 to 6 hours to clean. Even a 3,000 square foot single family home, it does not. Most of that time is babysitting the laundry, 45 minutes for the wash, 45 minutes for the dryer, but then you got the towels, then you got the king sheets, the queen sheets, all there. So, you're really paying for that hourly time. It is I think a disruptive opportunity, and there is some people trying to disrupt it, where you can actually separate laundry from cleaning because it'll cut down on your costs. It's something we're exploring at the moment. I know there's a couple people trying to disrupt that, and I think whoever does figure it out can make a boatload of money because it is ripe for exporting. It is your biggest cost outside of debt service is the cleaning turnover piece. So if you can trim that 5%, 10%, 15%, it's going to be huge for your NOI and your free cash flow. So you'll get that bid out from the cleaning company. So they'll be like, hey, for us to come here for 5 to 6 hours to clean, do all the laundry of this 4-bedroom house, it's going to be whatever, $250. Now what most people do is just, direct pass through. They'll charge the guest $250. So they collect that $250. So I guess technically it is collected revenue, is how we look at it, because you are collecting it. And then you'll get an invoice. So it turns around and goes right out the door as an expense. Some people mark it up, maybe charge the guest $275 or something like that in that example. It's really, you can't be way above market rate or nobody's going to book your place. If every other place is, the cleaning fee is $175 or $200 a night and you're charging $275, I can tell you right now, you're probably not getting booked, and you're either overcharging or you need to find a new cleaning company if you're not marking it up, because clearly there's other people in the market who are able to do it for that lower rate, the 200 or the 250, whatever that quote was. So you want to go look at your competitors. So look at your 10, 12 other closest listings. They're like, cool, what do all these have for cleaning fees? 125, 150, 125, 100, 105. Like, cool, we'll see where the blended average is. Go get some bids from cleaners in the area, and hopefully try to stay within that realm. That's always what we're going to try to do, is stay hopefully in the middle or the lower part, but we'll also pay more for better quality. So we'll typically fall in the middle or middle higher half, just naturally, because we want to pay for better quality.
And you like, for a 2,000 some square foot house, like $250 is about what it costs.
Yeah, when you take into account, like, making sure the hot tub's cleaned, making sure the amenities are lined up, the game room. So, like a standard 4-bed, 2,000-ish square foot, depending on where you're at in the country. Some parts have cheaper labor. You're probably going to be somewhere in that 225 to 275 range, depending on where in the U.S. you are.
Okay, nice. Yeah, if I had to guess, I would have actually thought it would have been a little higher. And just because also, I'll explain why, because of the timing too. Like, to get a house clean, that sounds totally reasonable with doing the laundry. But then, I mean, you guys got people cleaning on the weekends, holidays. It's just whenever they're moving out, they're not moving out. They're ending their stay, like they're checking out. Like, then they're working that day. So then, is there like a additional cost if this is whatever you're turning it and it's a holiday?
No, I mean, I think that comes with the business, that you'll probably, maybe have a guest checking in on Christmas or New Year's or, whatever the holiday might be. I think that kind of comes with the territory. A lot of the cleaning business owners, they kind of know that. The workers, we try to take care of them if they're doing a good job. You can give them a bonus. It's just, the right thing to do with any of your business partners in any space, to be honest. But those are the things that I think just come with the territory. They understand it, that, hey, it happens. Same thing. Somebody has to work the grocery stores those days. Somebody has to work, the guest communication. Somebody has to work. There's just certain things they don't close on those days, regardless of what it is.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that, and I guess, what are the ideas to disrupt that then? I mean, you can bring it off site, the laundry, or you got to get a second. Some of these houses, you guys. The
high level overview is this. So let's just use some round numbers there. So let's say the cleaning fee is $250 for 5 hours. So it's $50 an hour is the time allotment for both the cleaning and babysitting the laundry. But it really probably only takes 2.5 to 3 hours to actually do the cleaning. Now, depending on where in the country you're at, just a standard clean is probably anywhere from $20 to $25 an hour. So even if you're like, cool, short-term rentals, they want a premium, let's do $30 an hour. So 30 times 3 hours is $90. Now, when you take laundry, they'll typically charge you by the pound or by the bag. So they'll give you those laundry bags, and the cleaners would strip the sheets. They'll take it off site, and then they'll bring it back like on the next turnover. They'll drop it off at your facility or whatever if you have density in the market. Laundry, from what I've heard, can run anywhere from $30 to $40 a bag. So if you've got 2 or 3 bags full, all of a sudden you go, okay, I was let's see, so $30 an hour times 3, so we were $90 in. If I ran 3 bags at, say, $30 a bag is another 90. I'm all in 180. Well, I just saved $70 right there. So you can do now one of two things with that. So A, if the market will still bear $250 for a cleaning fee, you could charge $250 and now you have a $70 spread that you've now made, which is huge. Or what you can do is start to lower, say, to $225, $200, make your property more appealing, and now you can juice more bookings, which again is going to drive more revenue and drive more to the bottom line. So you see, is when you trim that cost, you have more opportunities available to you. So I think whoever can figure that out, and again, there's a couple groups out there that are doing this. Again, it's such a new asset class compared to multifamily, self-storage, industrial, et cetera, that a lot of these nuances are still being evolved in real time. And that, I think, is a huge opportunity. So, we are looking at that as an option to be able to cut down on, what is our biggest expense, and that's cleaning and turnover and laundry. So if we can save that money, drive more bookings, it's ultimately going to lead to a better yield for both us and our investors.
Nice. Have you guys, what about having a second set of laundry machines in the property? You guys looked at that?
Yeah, no, we've started doing that for our bigger ones that sleep 16, 20 people. I mean, even then, as crazy as it is, when you have, eight, that's going to automatically get you 8 to 10 total beds, and you got sheets, blankets, towels for 16 to 20 people. You got swimming pool towels, the kitchen towels, clean up around there, the face towels, the makeup removal, even with 2 washers and 2 dryers.
Yeah,
It's still going to push you 3 to 4 hours. Like, yeah, maybe it's not 5 and you trim a little off, but like it's still a ton. So yeah, for our bigger properties, we have started looking at, okay, we need 2 washers and 2 dryers.
yeah.
So
I mean, that makes sense. You guys need you need a laundromat next door on that one. That's
it looks very appealing to be like, man, if we just owned a laundromat, we could be in a good position. So don't tempt me with a good opportunity here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's funny. Then, okay, I think those are all the costs, except then what should somebody, because we went through all the OpEx, except what should somebody assume for replacing items then? Because now we went through contract services, R&M, cleaning. I think the only one left is, because how do you guys underwrite that? That's hitting the cash flow at least.
So I mean, if you have a $2,000 sectional in the living room and you're going to assume, a 2 to 3 year lifespan, you could just kind of amortize that out. Obviously, it might break in year 1, but it might not. But if you kind of amortize that, quote unquote, over the 2 to 3 year horizon, looking at like a dining room table, you'll probably get, honestly, assume the cleaners are taking care of it. Guest isn't like burning it and putting a stain on it that can't be cleaned off, and you've got a sealer on it. I mean, that thing will probably still last you 4 or 5 years. So I think it's looking at all of those and saying, okay, even with extra wear and tear, what's kind of the lifespan of this, the chairs, the bed frames, the beds themselves, sheets and towels, those you're going to be replacing, at least, stuff will get ruined. You'll be replacing. We always stock the house with plenty of extras. We do out of the get. So we do 3 sets of backups. So for this king bed, we'll have the set of sheets that's on it, and then we'll have 2 backups in the owner's closet. If we sleep 15 and it's 1 towel per guest, we'll have 45 towels there. Pool towels. So we triple everything. We've just learned it's just better to kind of build that into your upfront stocking cost. And then it can kind of run you, it definitely covers you through the first year and into the second. It's also just good to have on hand. You don't want to be like, well, 3 towels got lost, stolen, or ruined, and now the next stay we don't have enough. They're not clean, and now 3 people are sharing towels. Just not a great experience overall. So for us, just pay more up front, it's kind of our belief. And obviously that'll increase your, upfront stand-up costs, but ultimately it's just better in the long run, in our opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so if you have, let's say though, if you're looking just at that house, I would assume you're not making a schedule for all these individual items, how you were breaking out. You just have already like a rule of thumb. Like, I know we're spending X dollars a year replacing stuff on average. And then what's that number? Like, what are you typing in?
Yeah, I mean, could be, anywhere from $2,500 to, $5,000. I also think too, you can model it different ways. Some people will put an upfront reserve, which is, what we do. So if you're like, cool, I've set aside 25,000 in reserves, you could also pull from that and then just restock. So if you needed to replace that section for $2,000, now you're down to 23,000, then you could replenish your reserve and then again, start pulling your cash flows above that. So depending on how you operate, depending on how you run your, your P&L and your business, I've seen a lot of people do it different ways.
Okay. So yeah, that's how you guys like to do it with the reserve. And then does the reserve also cover that upfront stocking, or that's separate? The reserve is starting once everything's rolling.
Yeah, I mean, we'll allocate the reserve up front, and then from there, everything will be rolling. But our, standard stocking, when it's like, okay, we need a set of, kitchen pots and pans, we need a coffee maker. So you'll have your standard, like, you need these to get the house listed. When it comes to sheets, towels, linens, we just triple it. So that's just kind of been, we used to double it. We've realized, like, again, that first guest or that first issue, they might, wreck your towels or take them or something. It's just better to have 3. So, again, if you're an individual investor, maybe you only do 2. I think at the level we operate at, it's just so much more worth it for us to do 3.
And then if someone is using a third-party management company, what should they assume?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to look at your contracts. So some management companies include linens and sheets and towels and stuff in their fee. Some don't. They'll do just a direct pass through. So they'll manage it for you. They'll order it on your behalf, but it's ultimately you're getting on your charge. So you would really want to look at what services they provide. Definitely the management side is very fragmented. There's so many different ways to, do it. There's so many different like packages that are being put together. So because it's so fragmented, it really depends on, what your local market has available and what people are doing and what you're ultimately going to pay for and sign up.
Okay. Is there like a rule, like a range that people you want to expect? Like, cause, I guess it's more than just regular, multifamily, cause this is a 24/7 responding to even small stuff like I'm missing a sponge or my hangers are stolen. What would you assume? Let's say I'm underwriting this, or let's say that company I talked to, they quote me, let's say their quote was 15% of the revenue. What do you think of that?
That's going to be on the lower end. So market rate right now is between 20 and 30. That has been coming down. It used to be between 25 and 35. Naturally everything kind of settles. TVs, flat screen TVs, the used to be, $1,000. Now you can get one for, $200 for a 50-inch. So like everything, it'll settle with, competition, the free market. In my opinion, it probably ultimately settles somewhere in that like 16 to 24% range. When you model out an actual profitable business, it's really hard to get underneath that. There is groups that do charge less. It could be, one-off Johnny who's just managing 20, 30. That's his full-time job. He has one or two assistants. Like anything, there's, Billy who cuts the grass. He's going to be the cheapest guy in town, but it's actually Billy who cuts your grass.
Yeah.
Versus, ABC Lawn Care who has this huge conglomerate. They have more costs. So it's kind of finding that balance in the marketplace, but that's where it is today. It's 20 to 30. So if you got a quote for 15, you're probably on the lower half. That's going to be more, individual owner, or localized. I do see it continuing to come down. And like I said, even at the corporate rate, I think it will settle somewhere between that 18 and 24%. Right now it's between 20 and 30.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I wasn't quoted 15. I just threw out a number to prompt you to give me one back.
Good. That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
Well, yeah, actually, I thought market was 20 from what I had heard. So then I just wanted to say one that was maybe low to get you to say something.
20 is still market rate. It's on the lower end of the market for sure. Like if you've got a good, reputable, solid person at 20, I would, that you trust, reviews are great. You love their track record, you interviewed, I would pull the trigger. It's going to be hard to find somebody who's, going to undercut that much more, who's not either too small or too, not have the capabilities to perform.
Nice. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I still got a lot more questions, but I also want to talk about Techvestor. So I think, is there anything that, maybe before we talk about Techvestor, that you really want to hit, reviews, who's actually on the listing? I mean, just anything that comes to mind. Otherwise, let's just chat about Techvestor.
Yeah, no, man. There's so many great resources out there. So if you need help, like building your listing or what to look like or doing professional photos, what's great is it's been proven out so many times that there's so many great places, like anything, hey, I can't figure out how to screw this thing in or put it together. Like, I just YouTube it. So a lot of things like, hey, how do I build my listing, or what's the best description? There's so many different YouTube videos. You'll get plenty of ideas and help. So, with a lot of those nuances that we didn't touch on, that's really where I would, guide people towards.
All right. Nice. Yeah, and then or any other podcast Taylor's been on, maybe he covered it in that.
Yeah, perfect.
Check him out on. But yeah, nice. Well, then, yeah, tell us about Techvestor then.
Yeah, so we looked around the marketplace, and outside of buying your own and operating it, which again, you're signing up for a operational hospitality business when you get a short-term rental. Is how do you bring that opportunity to people to actually invest in? So what we set up is a, passive investment so people can, get exposure to this asset class, all the great things that come with it, the yields, the stays, the opportunity, but not have to do any of the work. So, our team does everything from acquiring, renovating, designing, furnishing, and actually operating the asset itself, so that it is completely passive for investors. So for us, it's just a way to bring, that opportunity to the masses and allow people to invest in a diversified portfolio. So again, we've got over 120 different assets that we bought in the last 19 months, and those are spread out throughout 10 different markets. So, you get diversification, you get that passive opportunity, but you do get exposure within your personal investments to that asset class.
And it's set up as a fund, which that's where the diversification and exposure to all the deals comes from? And then are you guys planning on just having one huge fund that's going to be open for a few years, or what are you going to, how is it going to work? A series of funds, or what's the game plan?
Yeah, great question. So we're actually in our second fund right now. So last year, 2022 was our first fund. And then we opened up February of 2023. We opened up our second fund, and that'll close here in December. So here in 2 months from the recording of this. And then Fund 3 is going to open up next year. So for us, we'll probably have, somewhere around 5 or 6 total funds. For now, we plan on just keeping them open for the calendar year. If there's an opportunity to extend a fund longer, 15, 18 months, for whatever reason, we would do that. But for right now, our game plan has just been, open it up for the calendar year, raise the assets that are, purchased within that fund will be, taken care of, distributed to those, investors within that fund. So yeah, we're currently in our second fund as we speak today.
And investors, they're getting, in terms of for tax purposes, they're getting a K1 and then are able to share in the depreciation you guys are taking and other tax benefits, or how does that work?
Yeah, certainly. Issued a K1, actually really great. We actually pass 100% of the available depreciation over to the investors. So all these single family homes, we'll order cost eggs, take the appropriate depreciation that we can. And then we'll pass that on to investors. So they're, getting that on their K1. So it's really great tax advantage income. And, if they can use those additional paper losses and consult their CPA, then those are always good things too.
Yeah. Nice. And then roughly what sort of returns do you guys project for the fund or for individual deals? How do you guys look at the returns?
Yeah, we're always targeting with anything we acquire, double digit returns, from that. Once we get it up and stabilized, that's really where we want to be is, double digit yield. Obviously, if you just launch a property, it's only been live for 3 months, the return might be, single digits, and then it's going to build itself up once it's got 8, 9, 10 months of, rental history and it's actually quote unquote stabilized. It's got enough booking lead time. It's got reviews built up. So for us, we want to kind of always deliver, double digits if we can. Obviously broader economy, if, rates stay high, if we dip into the, mid 8s or the 9s, then that's where it'll be. But ultimately, yeah, maybe, dip down into the 8s or, get up there and flirt with 12. So we kind of always, look at that 8 to 12, net return, on an annualized basis is really where we ultimately want to be and are currently, sitting in that pocket as we speak.
On a cash on cash basis, you're talking, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And then how do you guys finance the properties, and what's like the leverage point?
Yeah, no. So we do all individual loans for the property. Nothing's cross collateralized. I know that sounds wild, but yeah, gotta sign 121 docs or whatever that might be. So we'll use some form of leverage. We're kind of coming in right now somewhere between 72 and 74 LTV, and that's our going in on paper. And so what I mean by that is these properties, we put in new flooring, we add in fire pit, hot tub, paint, new kitchen. But because of the loans, there's typically a prepay penalty in, year of 1 or years 1, 2, 3. So it doesn't make sense to refi. So our actual value add, we might be at 60 LTV when you look at the actual property itself, but on paper and going in, it's going to be somewhere between that 72, 74. But for us, we have that great advantage to be able to use that leverage is because our DSCR, it floats right now between 2.8 and 3.1. So, I know in traditional commercial real estate, people might consider that high leverage, but, we just look at, our DSCR being so high that, it's really in an appropriate spot in our opinion. All of our debt's fixed for 10 or 30 years. I know a lot of multifamily guys got in trouble for taking, very short-term fixed floating rate debt. And we just didn't want to dabble in that. Of course, it's cheaper. Of course, we could have juiced returns to our investors had we taken on cheaper debt. But, to us, we don't want to be forced to refi. These are great ATM machines spitting off cash every quarter that we can pay to our investors. We want to sell when the time's right. We don't want to be forced sellers or have to take action on these piece of real estates that we own. So for us, all of our debt's fixed for either 10 or 30 years, which is, really advantageous for us and gives us the opportunity to sell at the right time.
And what are rates like today? I mean, and I know they'll feel high, but this, just for a scale, like what are we borrowing at right now?
Right now, last 30 days, depending on leverage and the state that it's in, we're closing anywhere from 7.75 to 8.25. That's kind of been the last 30 days. Again, depending on leverage and depending on what state it's in.
Yeah, and that's roughly only about 1% higher than where like traditional multifamily loans are right now. Depending on same thing, what program you're in, what leverage point, and that's anywhere from mid 6s to 7%. And I mean, so not, not is that different when you factor in, I mean, how much, how high your debt service coverage ratios are. Like that's where you're generating a lot of cash. If that's where you're at,
Yeah.
that's exciting. Well, nice. And then what markets are you guys in?
So we're spread across, we're in Arizona, Missouri, Illinois, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York. And then we're tracking about 4 or 5 other states like pretty intimately. So when we look at the data, if we're going to consider to go into a market, we're just not going to go there and buy one. There's just too much legwork and too much that goes into, setting up infrastructure and running these things. So, we're going to track a market for 30 to 90 days and really study it, make sure, okay, is it sustainable? How's inventory? The returns could look amazing in, whatever, Tulsa, Oklahoma, just pick a random city here. But if there's no inventory, if there's one 4-bedroom house that hits the market every month, it's going to be really hard to go acquire, 6, 12 or so properties so you can have some sort of density and get, operational efficiency. So for us, yes, you want to find opportunities with good returns, but we also want to find density. So that's kind of a big factor in places that we maybe won't go that could be good for an individual buyer. So people think like, oh, you guys just buy everywhere. And it's like, no, not really. There's probably actually great deals that we pass on that if you were, Johnny one-off investor, you could go buy that and get, nice, teen level returns, on your investment. But we just know inventory is too constrained or we won't be able to get enough density. So we're just going to pass on that market as a whole.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that also, when you were naming states, but are you guys really more focused on like sub markets? Like you said, Illinois. I mean, I'm assuming we won't just buy anything in Illinois. So like, how do you? No,
we're in a couple vacation markets outside of Chicago. And then like in Florida, we're in like 5 or 6 different like, coastal cities. Arizona, we're in Phoenix, Scottsdale. So that little, kind of, blended metro. So yeah, some states it's, maybe 1 or 2 submarkets, some it's, 4 or 5 submarkets per se. So it's really just depends on the state and the density and the opportunity within each of those, places. Okay, nice. Well, cool. Yeah, I appreciate it, Taylor. This was great. Let's just leave it there. So I think, how can listeners, viewers, how can they get in touch with you if they want to see more of what you're doing or learn about Techvestor? Yeah, I appreciate it. I try to stay very active on Twitter and LinkedIn. So, at Mr. Jones, STRs on Twitter, at Taylor Jones on LinkedIn. You can go to techvestor.com if you're interested in, learning more about the investment itself, taking a look at the numbers, seeing the data, historical returns, et cetera. We have a, book a call so they can book a, call with anybody from our investor relations team. And they're happy to go over any questions that, prospective investor might have. So, feel free to go over to techvestor.com and, we'll, let you see anything you want to see. Perfect. All right. Thanks, Taylor. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Thanks, Drew.
If you learned something from today's show, leave a review and hit that subscribe button wherever you enjoy your podcast. Dive deeper into real estate investing on Breneman Capital's website, breneman.com, where we have numerous free resources and information that can help both active and passive real estate investors. Accredited investors can get started today as a passive investor in our multifamily investment opportunities by hitting the Invest Now button on our website.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of Drew Breneman and guests as of the date of recording and do not purport to reflect the views or opinions of Breneman Capital LLC and its subsidiaries. Views and opinions are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon or deemed as investment or tax advice or an offer to buy or sell securities. The speaker cannot be held responsible for any direct or incidental loss incurred by applying any of the information offered.